Welcome back to the Big Tree podcast. This is another episode that we're doing, and I'm delighted to have Dan Weston back on as he's graciously chosen to come back on our podcast. And I'd like to ask you, Dan, if you're doing well.
Yeah, really, really good. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me back, and looking forward to chatting all things IPL over the next half an hour or so.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going through your feed about the IPL and I noticed that a lot of people have been talking about your predictions. And I mean, that
Yeah.
that has become quite the highlight in your profile I've seen recently.
Well, yeah. I mean, good and bad, I suppose. Like you always get people who are critical and who kind of have that after time view. Sometimes, like they don't say stuff at the time that would be relevant, but then suddenly they're an expert half a season into the tournament. So that that's what you got to cope with sometimes when you have a little bit of a reach on social media. Obviously, my methodology more would be to kind of predict things as at the time of the auction and before the season. I don't want to be reactive generally, but there's certainly situations with teams where I think that they're making some mistakes during the season so far, so we have to be reactive to those mistakes. But in terms of talking about auction successes and failures and things like that, we have if you're giving an opinion 4, 5, 6 games into the season, then you probably don't really have the right to have that opinion about an auction. You have to have to
Yeah,
make that point when the auction actually takes place.
yeah.
And so many people are not keen to do that, but they're suddenly experts when the season's been played for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, just looking through the predictions of most people, basically, I was looking through Jared Kimber's predictions, and most of his predictions too have come wrong. I think this has been quite a surprising IPL, kind of. So let's start off. I was just looking at the table toppers who have got the Gujarat Titans. So I think what's worked for them essentially in this season has been, first of all, Sai Sudarshan clicking, basically because after number three, if a team is able to go through their top order quickly, then I think it's not going to be pleasant for them. And obviously, I think Siraj
Mm.
doing bowling well for them, which I think in the last episode we talked about how RCB not retaining Siraj was not a bad decision, but Siraj has kind of proven everyone wrong. And Prasidh Krishna as well has worked really well for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that the Gujarat have got this clear game plan, really, of setting up with top three batters being what people are starting to refer to as volume batters in terms, that they produce a lot of runs, not necessarily big six hitters or guys who strike at huge strike rates, but players who produce a lot of runs on a consistent basis, and I think we've seen that a lot from GT this season and in previous years, and the addition of Joss Butler to the opening two of Sai Darshan and Shubman Gill really has reinforced that. I do think they have some questions to answer in their top sort of batting after that, and I definitely think that tactically they've been pretty strange with not going for the maximum overseas players. But there's a lot to like, and they've got a strong or fairly strong bowling group as well, which definitely is a big driver for success in the IPL. My learned model has them at number one by quite a big distance in the table of justice. So their position at the top of the IPL seems pretty fairly justified.
So, anything that you would have for them to improve upon, if anything is there at all?
Yeah, I think for me, I would be keen for them to maximise their overseas quota a little bit better. I know that Glenn Phillips is injured now, but I would have thought that he would have been a better option than a
Yeah,
Shahrukh Khan or a
agree.
Tawatia. And especially when you incorporate the value of his fielding into the discussion as well. So, yeah, look, probably something that they're short on. But overall, what they're set up with a certain way that's worked so far. I'm looking forward to seeing how they react in a match where they go three down in the power play, for example, and what they do to try and construct a good total then. But until that happens, they've done very well.
All right. So for the number two team, that is the Gujarat Titans, or not the Gujarat Titans, the Delhi Capitals. Um, what struck out to me has been obviously Jake Fraser McGurk not working out for them. It's increasingly looking like he was a one season wonder, but too early to judge. I mean, and then you've got KL Rahul, who's got a re what can we say, a reawakening at the IPL again, and then
Yeah.
Kuldeep Yadav. I think that has been the biggest positive for them, that Kuldeep has struck gold for them this season and has arguably been the best bowler because of Bumrah not being fit for the first few games.
Yeah, I think Kolkata has been absolutely outstanding and has negated, I think, a fairly disappointing season for Akshar Patel in terms of those DC spinners. Kuldeep's been magnificent, and as you say, KL Rahul with that awakening. I mean, look, let's see how that goes over the next year or two, but he's talking very positively. Gone are the strike rates don't matter conversation,
Yeah.
and he looks like he's playing a much freer brand of cricket now, which is really positive for him as an individual, for India, the national team, and for DC. So fair play. In terms of Jake Fraser McGurk, I think one season wonder is a little harsh. I think he's a talented player, but I think the problem for him is that he needs to evolve a little bit in terms of the innings construction. And he doesn't need to play really super high risk shots from ball one necessarily. And I think that also there's probably a lot more discussions around how to deal with him after that first season in the IPL. You know, teams are looking at his video a lot closer, his data a lot closer now, and working out plans to combat him. So now he needs to evolve to combat those plans from the opposition team. So it's almost like a cat and mouse, if you like, in terms of trying to stay one step ahead.
So what would you have them better in their side?
I think that probably the fact that they haven't brought in a replacement player for Harry Brook is a negative. And I certainly, at the time, I was very strong on them picking. My preferred option would have been Ben Duckett. Now that hasn't happened I don't know, for whatever reason. And I think that would have been if he was at the franchise. You know, Faf's been in and out with injury. Fraser McGurk's not played well. Duckett coming in at the top of the order would have been a real boost for them. So that would be something to consider. Apart from that, I mean, they look a pretty well drilled team. I have their bowling rated the highest out of all teams in the tournament so far. So that's a huge positive for them. So it's just a bit of tweaking with the batting really, and opening partnership probably.
Okay, now on to Bangalore. I guess Bangalore, kind of, for the first day of the auction, everyone felt like, what are they doing? No one really understood their strategy. And then now increasingly it feels like they've kind of conjured up something good, because you've got Salt with Kohli, who complement each other really well. And then you've got Particle. And my only issue with this side would be kind of Livingston. I don't really know what he's doing currently for RCB. I put out a tweet saying he's 1/4 a batter right now and 1/8 a bowler. I'd rather them play Jacob Bethel. I'd love to know what you think of that. And generally, I think in the bowling department, everything is clicking. Just I'm a bit unsure of the bowling lineup when they're tested more. I don't think they've been tested adequately, and when they've been tested against, I think, Delhi and Gujarat, the two teams that kind of really tested them, they lost. So I think we'll have to see how they fare.
Yeah, I was a little bit easier on RCB at the auction compared to others. I didn't mind what they did, actually. To be honest with you, there's I think a lot of positives, although still some question marks. I think Josh Hazlewood's been very good for RCB throughout the tournament so far. I think that's been his performance levels have definitely been in terms of his expectation, or my expectation of him, I should say, the upper end of where I think he would be. And they're just kind of, I think that they're probably, this is a RCB group that's playing more as a team than a group of individuals, probably more than any RCB team that I can remember watching for many years. And they just seem to be taking the tournament in their stride generally so far. My model has them rated the third best batting group and also a positive bowling group. Only them and GT are positive in my model for batting and bowling, so that's a huge positive. Regarding your conversation about Liam Livingstone, Jacob Bathell, like these are two players that I know really well. I worked with them a lot in England, and actually I think both of them are outstanding players, and I think that they offer something different. So I don't look at it as an either or conversation with them. I look at both players who are good enough to get in a starting 11 on their own merits if the situation dictated, if they had the overseas combos where they could both get in a team. So I think that I'd back either of them to do well over a long period of time.
Yeah, I guess that kind of is reasonable because RCB over the years has been changing and chopping quite a lot. So
Yeah.
just following on with the same team throughout the competition. I mean, someone like I don't know, someone like Livingston might just do a Krunal Pandya if there's a final in like 2017, like how Krunal Pandya played. So yeah, and what did you improve with RCB?
Look, I don't think there's a lot really to change. I think that they're a coherent unit. Maybe they're not. They're not going to feature on highlight reels necessarily, but they're a team that do what they do and they do it well. A bit like GT, I suppose. They're probably the two teams that are constructed with, I think, the closest thing to resembling probably a coherent batting and bowling balanced game plan. I think SRH tried to do that as well, but for various reasons it hasn't worked, which we'll talk about later. But overall, I think that there's not a lot to change really. I don't think that there's many issues here.
Just one last bit on RCB. What do you feel of Virat Kohli's new avatar? I mean, he's kind of definitely still assessing the situation, but there's a clear shift in how he plays T20 cricket.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was getting at for a long period of time in the past when I have been a little critical of his approach in T20, particularly his low risk approach against spin. I think he needed to trade off a little bit more with some high reward. But he's evolving, and credit to him now that even at the age of 36, I think he is now, that he's able to do that. So yeah. I have to give him respect.
Okay, so on to the Lucknow Super Giants now. Before getting on to anything they did, I'd like to ask you this. Were you as perplexed as me when Rishabh Pant chose to not bowl Bishnoi when Dhoni came out?
Yeah, that was a weird one. I think it's well documented that Dhoni probably will not take on the spinner early. So I think that's a really good opportunity for LSG to ramp up the required run rate at that point in time. So I think that was, based on what we know as individuals, without being inside the team's decision making think tank, that it was certainly a looks like a bad decision. And I think perplexing is probably being a touch kind. Now, yeah, very very strange.
So obviously they're very batting heavy and kind of just banking all guns blazing with the one side of the ball like SRH did last year. But I don't necessarily think they've got as good a batting lineup as SRH had last year.
No.
Most of all, I think Rishabh Pant, just how he's batting, he scored 63 or 49. And I was not very big on him right from the start of the IPL. I know a lot of people back his talent and I understand those views. But I just feel like, and this is completely a personal opinion, I don't think 27 CR is warranted for him.
Yeah, I don't think 27 CR is warranted for any player out of 120 pers. Unless probably Bumrah would be the only one who I would say, 25 plus would be reasonable. I don't see the difference between a Rishabh Pant and a 10 CR batter being particularly big. And he's struggled this year. Even yesterday, he didn't look, particularly, 63 runs or 49 wasn't particularly fluent, and it wasn't particularly later with boundaries, 8 boundaries and only in 49 balls, which was below the average boundary percentage for the tournament by fair distance. I think that ultimately, it's difficult to say that he cost them the game because no one else passed 30 in the team, but he he probably did take up a few too many resources with the batting. Miller didn't face a ball, for example. So yeah, certainly some question marks to answer. But as you said earlier, he's a talented player. So who knows? Who knows what the future holds for Rishabh Pant? And with regards to LSG now as a collective, and the batting group particularly as a collective, I mean, they've overperformed, I think, so much in the tournament so far. They are, in terms of performing above the sum of their parts, they really are in the stratosphere. And I said, before the tournament that if they're going to qualify, Nicholas Perran's going to have a bad back by the end of it because he'll be carrying their entire batting group. I think that's been proven so far. Yep. Mitch Marsh's overperformance was a little bit of a surprise to me, I must admit. Certainly not in line with his previous returns in the IPL. Perran, obviously, we know he's a world-class player and has done exceptionally well for them. But if he fails, as obviously he did against CSK with 8 off 9 balls, then LSG are under the pump a little bit, and we saw that in this game. The bowling, I'm not convinced by their bowling either, to be honest with you. I think Shardul Thakur, obviously, if you're looking at his basic numbers over the tournament so far, have not been particularly bad. But he's got a lot of wickets from stuff, mediocre balls like full tosses and balls with low expectation for wicket taking and high expectation for run conceding. He's got away with it. He didn't get away with it against CSK, so we saw that lean towards mean reversion for Shardul Thakur, 4 overs for 56. Been really, really impressed with Digvesh Ratty, the spinner, though, and love his personality, love the celebrations. I don't think that he should be getting fined for these celebrations. I think that
agreed.
The exuberance and the joyousness of playing in his first season in the IPL should not be curtailed by anybody, and I'm really pleased with him that he's had a pretty big breakthrough. I think Avesh Khan, now he's fit again, has helped them as well. So yeah, I think that they've got kind of three-ish bowlers contributing maybe 10, 12 banker overs generally when Pant decides to bowl Bishnoi for his full 4 overs anyway, and it's the other sort of 8, 10 overs that I feel that they've got an issue with.
Yeah, I think the natural improvement as soon as Mayank Yadav comes back will be that LSG will have a 5 times better bowling lineup just on his back alone.
Yeah, but the problem is that he's not ever stayed fit. So it's unrealistic or unfair as well, you would say, probably, to expect him to play every single game at a high level when he comes back.
Yeah. All right. So on to the Kolkata Knight Riders. A lot of things have not fired for them. I was at the first game, RCB KKR, and it kind of felt like it is kind of like 11 players playing rather than a team of 11 playing. It kind of felt like that when I saw them playing, honestly. And it has to do kind of with the fact that Narayan hasn't really fired in this competition as he was last year, and just they're not as good a team anymore, in my opinion.
Well, Narayan was never going to perform as well this year as he did last year, and I've said that at various points in the last year, because his full shot percentage in last year's tournament was so high that it was unsustainable for him to reproduce the level of run scoring at the strike rate that he did in future seasons. So that wasn't a surprise to me. I don't mind KKR. I think that they haven't, as you say, they haven't really kind of fired as a collective rather than a group of individuals yet. I think what some of the teams who are towards the top have done is that 5 or 6 players have really performed in a given game, whereas at KKR has been just a few players performing in each game, different players performing in each game, not as a collective, not all firing as a collective. Obviously, we saw that against CSK recently that did change. Bowling wise and batting wise was an impressive win, which really boosted their net run rate as well. I think that they've got one of the better bowling attacks in the tournament, and that will help them a lot. But their batting has got to improve against the better teams for them to be pushing for the latter stages in the IPL this year, I think.
Okay, so 2 things. do you think that Venkatesh Iyer is heavily overpaid? And second, do you think that KKR needs to move on from Russell and Narayan because they're kind of aged now? And also, yes, what did you improve in this side right now?
Look, KKR are a really loyal team. We've seen the quotes this morning from Ramandeep Singh talking about that loyalty again at the franchise. So that's they've had Russell and Narayan for long periods of time at the franchise. So they're looking to trade on that loyalty. But the problem is obviously as players get older and as we know, Narayan's close almost 37 and Russell also just turning 37 in a couple of weeks time. The players do decline as they get older,
Yeah.
and I think we've seen that with Andre Russell in particular with the lack of bowling output and probably doesn't have quite that fear factor that he once had. He comes
Yeah.
into bat with 70 needed off 6 overs or something like that, and you think it's game over.
RCB 2019 versus Russell was like nightmares for me.
Yeah, and he's done it so many times, and I don't feel like that anymore with Russell. So that's a big drop off for him. I think Narayan is still performing to a high level, and I think actually spinners get away with it a little bit more, that age related decline. But certainly, Russell's going to, how they manage Russell over this 3-year cycle is going to be a massive discussion point. Should be a massive discussion point for the franchise because you can't keep paying good money for a player whose output is declining. It's as simple as that. With regards to Venkatesh Iyer, I said at the time, I maintain it now. I think he was hugely overpriced at the auction, and I didn't understand that at all, and I still don't understand it. And I think it was a poor decision, yeah, I would say I said earlier, 25 plus crore for a batter who doesn't really bowl doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yep. And so let's move on to the Punjab Kings now. Due credit to them, we were all saying that Punjab, with so much money, we're going to waste it all, but they've built a decent side and they're doing really well. They're kind of
Yeah,
having a cohesive kind of unit, and Ponting is kind of ingrained a philosophy which kind of looks nice to me at this point because you've got Iyer and Priyansh Arya looks like a really good find for them. I've seen you bigging him up, and just the stock of Indian talent just keeps giving at this point.
yeah, I love this fact about the IPL is that every year there's new superstars coming to the fore, and Priyansh Arya is obviously definitely one of them this year. Really, really like what I've seen from him so far. Fearless with the bat, and yeah, that's what him and Prabhsimran Singh really can be an explosive opening partnership. I'm really shocked at Shreyas Iyer's output so far. To be honest with you, I didn't see that coming at all. Yeah, let's see if that continues over the rest of this 3-year cycle. But they've got a good group. I think that they're a very strong batting team, but their bowling looks to be quite a big red flag for me, particularly now with
Ferguson
Lockie
out.
Ferguson's injury. Yeah. I don't know what they're going to do with that. Do they? I mean, personally, for speaking, I would bring in Xavier Bartlett as close to like for like replacement for Lockie Ferguson. There's chat about them bringing in Aaron Hardy or Omazai as more of an all rounder, but I don't understand. I don't understand the value for that. I would be looking to pick the best bowler at this point in time rather than reinforcing the batting further. And I think that actually, with Mark Jansen having struggled a bit. And usually Chahal also struggling a bit as well. There's definitely a desire for if I was working with Punjab still would be to strengthen the bowling rather than looking at an all round option.
All right. So we've got the Mumbai Indians next, and well, they've got quite a funny story this IPL. They were the only team which were defeated by CSK for a long time, and then they defeated DC. So I mean, looking at their lineup, it does not look like one which should be where it is right now. You've got Surya Kumar Yadav, Tilak Verma, Hardik Pandya. That's a middle order everyone would dream to have, and then you've got Bumrah as well. So what do you think's gone wrong for them?
Look, I was less strong on Mumbai pre-tournament, and anyone who is interested in my views on Mumbai pre-tournament can check out the YouTube video I made about their prospects in the tournament. Look, I think that there's a lot to discuss here actually with MI. I think that, as you say, like a 3-4-5 is fine. Hardik has not, been pretty inconsistent with the bat, so I'm not sure I'd have him in like that sort of dream middle order. But I've actually been pretty impressed with his nous as a bowler in this tournament so far. I think the biggest problem that they've got is working out a strong opening partnership,
Yeah.
really, and it's compounded by the fact that they're completely unwilling to dispense with Rohit Sharma.
Yep.
And they spend a lot of their budget on him, and that's a big problem for me. So until they're willing to look at the difficult decisions and the unpopular decisions, they've probably held on to him for at least a cycle too long at big money now.
Yeah.
And how that translates on pitch is critical. And Ryan Rickleton got 40 odd against DC recently, but I'm not massively convinced he's an above average opener at IPL level. Will Jack's got shoved down the order recently. I've often talked about Rickleton Jacks in this Mumbai setup probably being an either or decision rather than a both in the team as an overseas combo. That way that they could bring in a Reece Topley with the ball or a Bevan Jacobs as a finisher, as various options. So look, I think that they've really struggled to work out their best team combo. I think they're getting there somewhere now, but they often start slowly, and they often make some really strange calls tactically with selection in particular early in the tournament, and we've seen that again here.
It makes little sense, like you said, to have retained Rohit Sharma, who's been, and I spoke of this earlier as well, very, very mediocre over 5 or 6 years now, I'd say. And for a team like the Mumbai Indians, who pride themselves on being the champions of scouting talent and having the best of the best players, having Rohit, I don't know. I just think that at a point, the IPL kind of does not look like a top level league when you're constantly just keeping players for their name rather than the output. Because you'd not have Ronaldo playing for United right now, would you?
No, well, that's a really, really key point. And actually, it's I find it strange because these are owners of IPL teams are some of the richest people in the world, and certainly that's the case for Mumbai.
Yeah.
So whatever money they can get from commercials for having Rohit Sharma in their team is like not a tiny percentage of their wealth as a ownership group. And so why would they not just try and maximise the actual on-pitch output? Because you can't buy a title.
Yeah.
It's one of the few things that a really, really rich person can't buy.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they look to try and win something that you can't buy? They've got more money than they would know how to spend. So a few crore here or there for having extra commercials doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
Okay, so with the Rajasthan Royals, I found their last game against RCB most compelling because the template at how Yashasvi Jaiswal played, I think he's not been faring really well this season. He kind of looked like, obviously 75 or 47 as a retrospective view looks like he's done well, but I think it showed up a bit too many balls at the start. And then same with Samson and Parag got out at a bad time. I just don't think that they're looking as good a lineup as they did in the first half of 2024. And their bowling as well, I don't back it as much.
Well, I think the bowling is more of a relevant point, actually, because I think from that 2022 to 2024 cycle, their bowling was a lot stronger, and not just stronger in terms of starting 11, but also in terms of bench strength as well. And I felt that they had a really smart plan to starve the market of good bowling resources, particularly from domestic players. And that hasn't happened. They didn't carry that over, which makes me feel like their strategy was more luck than judgment in the last cycle. Look, I think they made a lot of mistakes with their recruitment and retention in particular. Hetmeyer retention doesn't make any sense to me at
Yeah.
that price, given the fact that he's often
Coming in at
got
number
a
8.
really late entry point. Yeah, exactly. Dhruv Jarrell, I think they could have bought back cheaper at auction, and then they've lost their volume batter, Josh Butler, to GT. And personally, for me, I mean, obviously we don't know what we're not privy to the discussions inside each franchise about retentions, but for me, if you have a choice between retaining Josh Butler or Shimron Hetmyer, it's an easy call for me to take Butler. With the ball, I'm not sold on their domestic pace options at all.
Apart from Sandeep Sharma, I guess.
I mean, he's okay, but I don't think he's top 25 percentile in
Yeah.
the tournament at all. And when you've got Tushar Deshpande not performing particularly well, nor not expected to perform particularly well, Hasaranga has been inconsistent. Arch has been inconsistent. Tikshana hasn't had a huge impact. So you've got the overseas players not all performing consistently. You have to have the IPL. In the IPL, you have to have a strong domestic bowling group, and they haven't really got that. And it's a big difference from their squad construction from the last cycle.
Okay, the Sunrisers now. I mean, if I'm being honest, everyone is criticizing them for going all hammer and tongs. And kind of last game, I think there was a visible difference in how Travis Head and Abhishek Sharma were going. But regardless, I think I'd rather a team play like that than play like how a team like CSK had been playing. It's a lot. It's 10 times more enjoyable in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. So, like, if you're a soccer coach, right, and you lose a game, I don't know, 4-3 or 5-4, and you've had a real good go at winning the match, and you fall short by a goal, but you've had a real attacking go at it, you're going to get a lot more time and a lot less criticism from losing 1-0 compared to losing 1-0 and not having a shot on target, which is a kind of more like that CSK scenario. So look, I think that with the way that Sunrisers have played, and this is where I don't like the criticism that they've got, because actually the same people who are criticising them are the same people who were praising them last year.
Yeah.
And they haven't changed their approach. They've just looked, that's the volatility of that high variance attacking style that they've got. There are going to be days where it works. There are going to be days where it doesn't work. They're the opposite of a GT who are really consistent. But if SRH play GT, there'll be games where GT can't cope with SRH's batting. But there'll be times where GT's consistency outweighs SRH. So it's two very different approaches. But you can't praise them non-stop last year and then criticise them this year when they've basically done the same thing. So again, that's that sort of after timing that I mentioned at the start of the video a little bit with terms of people on social media and stuff. It doesn't really impress me. Look, I think that the SRH have still got a chance of getting into the top 4. I think that the confidence that they got from chasing that total against PBKs last time out will stand them in good stead. It wouldn't shock me if they went on a big run of results. It's interesting because their batting has had probably more criticism, but actually their bowling, in particular death bowling metrics, are really not good. So how they look to alter that is going to be a really fascinating discussion as well. And I think that they really need to just tighten up. I think they've conceded something like 29% boundaries in the tournament so far. So they're conceding a boundary, almost 3 boundaries every 10 balls, which is far too much. And that really puts their batting under pressure as well,
Okay, so it's 2050. We're in Mars, and Elon Musk has colonized Mars. The IPL is happening with Saudi-backed money. MS Dhoni comes out and gives the coin a toss. I mean, when is CSK going to move on from MS Dhoni?
Look, the irony is I said this recently as well on social media, and I made a video about it as well. Is that actually, look, MS Dhoni's role at CSK attracts far more scrutiny than any other role for
Yeah.
any in their squad. And actually, if you're looking at raw numbers, he's probably performing better in his role than most people are performing in everyone else's role. And in terms of at CSK, their problem is not MS Dhoni. He's taking up
Yeah.
1/30th of their purse at 4 crore. He's keeping wicket to a high standard. He's, I would say, still arguably one of the best finishers in the league. He's certainly got excellent numbers at what I call high risk shots. Playing high risk shots, his execution of high risk shot options is superb. He does have weaknesses. We know that. We spoke about the spin stuff when we spoke about that match against LSG yesterday. But he's not their biggest problem. Their biggest problem by far is the fact that they've got no idea what their best team is. They've got no idea what their best overseas combo is. They've chopped and changed, which is very CSK. They're now settling in with Anshul Kamboj as a partner for Khalil Ahmed up top with the power play, which I think has really benefited them. I think he's a considerably better option than Mukesh Chowdhury in that role, which I was very surprised. They've worked out that Jamie Overton's not a power play bowler again, which is obvious to anyone in England, but somehow seemed to escape the CSK think tank. They're trying different combos to see what works. I still don't think they have any idea what their best team is, but at least I think the positive for them is that their bowling generally has been okay. Like their bowling metrics are not bad, and so if they can somehow create a top 7, top 8 with a little bit more intent and able to chase 180 type scores at least, I think that would be their roadmap to not having a disastrous season.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with Dhoni. I just said that as a satirical imagery, but I think that CSK, Dhoni has been playing a very vital role even now. And that's why I was saying that even at 43, you are so dependent on one man that you have to give him the captaincy. No one else is really stepping up for them. That's what I was essentially getting at with them. And with CSK, I think they're kind of living in denial at this point. And a lot of people are speaking. I saw Stephen Fleming and Dhoni both speak of how they said that they're not the side who gets 60 of 6 in the power play. That no. I think that is just living in the ancient times. You have to move on with the game.
Yeah, you do. And I mean, 60 of 6 is still a big ask, but they can't be 40 of 6. And they've obviously had Devon Conway come in recently, who's been an opener with almost like an anchor opener, I should say. And then they curiously picked Deepak Hooda at the start of the tournament, whose numbers have not been good at all in recent years. Rahul Tripathi is disappointed. So it's when they lose that first wicket early that they've really struggled to kick on in the power play. And they're still trying different combos. They had Jadeja at 4 the other day, which actually, it's a bit of a Marmite decision. I've seen people love it. I've seen people hate that decision on social media. I kind of get where they're coming from with it a little bit. So yeah, he's not a death hitter, and I think that's the biggest problem. So where do you bat someone like that when you've got 2 players like Jadeja and Ashwin, obviously, who Ashwin didn't play in the last game against LSG? That they're both all rounders, but they both don't have good hitting numbers. So how you actually structure them into an 11, which has a fairly pedestrian top order as well, is really difficult.
All right. So before I let you go, Dan, I'll first tell you my top 4 and I'll ask you your top 4. My top 4 will be RCB, Punjab, Delhi, and GT. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go 3 of those teams. I'm going to go with GT, DC, and RCB. Less strong on Punjab because I just bowling weak teams really struggle in T20 tournaments. I'm gonna go with KKR as my fourth choice.
And who's winning it?
Oh, I don't like making those calls because there's
Yeah.
four really good teams.
Yeah.
If that happens, there'll be four really good teams in the last four, and they're all going to be 50-50 or 55-45 against each other in knockout game, and you can't call that stuff. So, look, I think all of those teams would have an excellent chance of beating each other actually in knockout stages, and would be really competitive.
All right. Thank you, Dan, for coming on. It's been lovely having you on. We'll see you again sometime soon, maybe.
Absolutely. Really enjoyed it. Good to chat.
Cheers.